pattern we're going to tie today is called the Payday Midge. This is a fantastic pattern, and some interesting things along the way that we'll talk about as we tie. And I've got a size 16 hook. It's almost like a scud hook in the vise, even though it's kind of tied up as a dry. I'm just going to go ahead and get that red 14-aught shear thread started and attached to our hook. And there are not a lot of ingredients, but this it turns out to be just a fabulous looking fly, and fishes really, really well. So something that I've started a little bit more recently is I'll actually just grab a peacock herl off of a peacock eye like this and use an eraser and strip it. You can just rub the eraser and it'll rub all those fibers off. So you can kind of see that's off of that same peacock eye right there. It ends up giving me a little bit longer of a quill, and in this case, usually a little bit stronger too. But let's go ahead and get it started. This is going to become the ribbing on our body. And I don't want to crank down too hard on this thread because I can cut through that quill pretty easily. But I don't want a lot of thickness. So I may, turn my thread counterclockwise a few times just to flatten it out a little bit. As we come back down around part of the bend of the hook here. There we go. So I'm going to go, nearly halfway down, not quite halfway through the gape of the hook there. Then I'm going to go ahead and we'll just bring our thread back up forward. And we're going to do we're just going to wrap this quill up the body, and it'll make a really nice segmented body for us. With that, I can go ahead and turn my vise this way. I can cut off the last little bit. So let's have my thread right up around here. This is just what I do. Others will do this differently. I just find it a little bit easier. I've got my half-hitched whip finisher here, and I'm just going to do a turn or two. Okay. That's just putting a half-hitch knot into my thread there. Then I can scoop my bobbin and cradle over here, and then I can tighten up my thread a little bit, and we'll just be able to lay our thread right on that bobbin cradle, which gives us our hands, and that's the important thing. So from here I've got a set of hackle pliers that I'm going to go ahead and attach to this peacock herl that we've stripped those little fibers off of. See if I can get that attached the way I want it. I'm just going to kind of hold that up, try to keep it away from the point of the hook there. So we get our first couple of wraps way back there towards the end. Nice thing about the peacock herl, well, you need to be really gentle because it'll break on you. So you're doing the dance here. And that dance is, I need to keep enough tension on this that it doesn't come unwound. And it makes a nice rib. But I'm not pulling so tight that it's breaking off. And with each turn, I'm trying my best to avoid the hook point. Now this peacock herl gets thicker as it moves up, which works perfectly, because that's what we're trying to accomplish with the ribbing on this. Is that the segments should get a little bit larger as you move up the bug. And with that red thread underneath, it's going to kind of show through just a tiny little bit, and it just adds a little pop to the pattern. Now that I'm up here near the top, I've got to keep my tension on this or it'll come unwound. I'm going to get my bobbin off the bobbin cradle where it was taking a nap, and it was a very short nap for it. Take our thread and let's tie that peacock herl off and in place, just with a couple of wraps over the top of it. I'll take a couple of wraps, going back as well. Then I can just release them from my hackle plier like that. Now we'll come in with our scissors and we'll cut that right off. So just to make this fly just a little bit more durable, we're going to put some UV resin on it, on the peacock herl there. I'm just using a thin resin here. We'll get that started on the top and drag it down. I want it to actually go down far enough where it's sliding off of those herls and getting itself onto the shank of the hook a little bit. That will just help make this a little bit more durable. Make sure you've got it coated on either side. So I'll turn my vise and make sure on the sides I've got a nice even coat of the resin. It's a nice thing about UV resin is most commonly you have some time to work with it. Especially if you feel like you've got a little bit too much, you can take a little bit off. But once I've got it about where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and hit it with my torch. So next we're going to tie in a hackle. We're going to use some bar ginger. I really love the bar ginger hackle. You should get one if you don't have one. I just love it. I've already prepared a feather for the size 16 here. We're going to get this tied in. After we move, we're going to do a couple of things actually. It never hurts to loosen your vise up a little bit and straighten up the hook like that. It was good on that downward trajectory when we're working on the ribbing, but now we're done working on that. So moving it up is actually going to help us out a little bit. I'm going to hold that hackle fiber right where I want it my hackle to start. I'm going to take one wrap over the top of it, and I'm going to cross over, go over the other side of it. And what you'll see is that brings that feather in almost a 90 perpendicular angle by doing that, which is exactly what you want when you're trying to get your hackle tied on your fly. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and take a few thread wraps up towards the eye. And you'll note that the stem of the feather is just going to kind of bend and follow us a little ways. One thing, I feel like I've got enough there that it's not going to come undone. I'm going to just go ahead and come in with my scissors and we'll cut off the balance of that stem. And now I'm going to use just this tiniest little amount of it's UV2 seal dubbing in a fire red. And you can see, hopefully you can see, it's very, very sparse. We're going to dub a little thorax on here, but not much. But it's going to give us that red pop that we're looking for in this fly. So I'm backing my thread off a little bit because somehow it snuck its way up more towards the eye than I wanted it. So we're going to take a few wraps behind our hackle here and try not to have the dubbing steal away. So we'll just wrap kind of a little bit behind our hackle feather there. So we've got a good wrap or two behind our hackle feather. Take another few wraps in front of it. I'm just tightening this as we go. This is a very, very stringy dubbing, so you're going to have strands going all over the place as you tie this on here. But we'll sneak back in with our scissors and we'll clean that up. So I'm going to just stroke some of those fibers back. See if we can get them to stay for us. Probably not. So we're going to do something that we did earlier with the quill. I'm just going to throw in with my whip finisher a couple of turns so I can put my thread on the bobbin cradle. So I'm just taking a wrap or two just to basically tie a half hitch in here. I'll bring my bobbin cradle over and into position, and that just allows, again, me to be completely hands-free, which is what I want to be right at this moment. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our ginger hackle here into our hackle pliers. And once we've got those in our pliers, we're going to hold it straight up. And we'll go ahead and take our first turn. We want to get one full turn around the back. And then we'll start moving up towards the eye of the hook a little bit. And it's really only going to be 4, 5, 6 wraps at the most. So we're going to be done right about there. I'm going to take my thread off the bobbin cradle and tighten it up a little bit anyway. And just throw that over the top of that hackle just to make sure we get it locked in place. And then I'll take a couple of wraps on the other side. We should be free and clear to be able to release our hackle plier now. We're also free and clear to give ourselves a little bit of extra thread so we can do a whip finish here. We'll try to be careful here to not trap too many fibers. So we're just going to take a couple of turns at first. And we're going to go ahead and knot that up just to save kind of where we are with our work. And then I'll go ahead and do that once more just to give us a little bit more of a finish on here. I tend to be slow, and that's okay. I don't want to trap too many of those fibers, so I'll just be a little bit careful. I'll pull my thread tight there. I can see about where it is attached. I'll turn my whip finisher around, and then I'll get my cutting tool, and that'll allow me to cut that right off. And the last thing we'll do is we're going to come in and we're going to clip off this piece of the balance of this ginger hackle. And that's the finished product right there. The Payday Midge. A great midge pattern. Actually a lot of fun to tie to, I have to admit. So throw a hook in your vise and give this one a shot.